It's a reshuffle that will resonate. François Hollande rejigging his cabinet with an eye to his re-election bid next year. Politics junkies will pay attention to names. The former Prime Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault returns. He'll be replacing Laurent Fabius as Foreign Minister. The Greens are back in an extended cabinet. But change is also about policy, not just for the current government, but for a republic currently embroiled in a bitter argument over the enshrinement of anti-terror measures in the Constitution. Does the government's reaction to the Paris attack signal a fundamental shift to the right that will split the socialists for good and redraw political boundaries in France? Also, we're going to see how the right is also divided over measures that include the stripping of dual citizenship for terror convicts, and how both sides are chasing after the votes of the far right. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the Hollande reshuffle. With us to help us understand it all, our politics editor, Mark Perlman. Thanks for being with us, sir. Also joining us, Pierre-Alexandre Tellier, co-founder of the Neat app Gov, which does real-time opinion surveys.
Good evening.
Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
And we want to welcome with us Simon Rioux of the youth wing of the Socialist Party, the Young Socialists. And that's important because when we're going to be talking later about this split in ideology within your party. It'll be interesting to see how young people, of course, see this. And it's always a pleasure to speak to Jim Shields, who joins us from Bristol. Jim Shields, who teaches at Aston University. Hello.
Hello.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. We're not going to bore you with a long list of names. Nonetheless, let's give you the big picture with you, Mark. 19 women, 19 men, 38 cabinet members, 6 more than in the previous government. This isn't the minor tweak that some had said it would be when Laurent Fabius moved to the Constitutional Council.
Yes, but it's not a major overhaul either. Clearly,
it's in between.
It's in between. Yes, it's interesting because 4 ministers exited the government, and you have 10 new minister or junior minister. You kind of have a lot of junior minister, and actually a lot of junior faces in the government as junior ministers.
Yeah, when I see some of the names of some of the cabinet posts, you get the feeling they're not going to be doing a lot of work. Some of them, it's a bit.
Well, you know, it's a willingness to show that you're opening the government to a new generation in junior positions.
You're making room for
yes,
allies.
But there are 2 main messages, and essentially bringing back your first prime minister, which is very unusual, rather unprecedented, Jean-Marc Ayrault, who was François Hollande's first prime minister, and now comes back as a foreign minister to serve in the government of Manuel Valls, the man who succeeded him, and essentially pushed him out of the government. So it's going to be interesting to see how those 2 will work together. And the second element is obviously the return of the Greens to the government. They left the government when Manuel Valls was appointed prime minister in April of 2014. The leader, well, actually, she left her leadership position because she entered the government, Emmanuelle Cos. She's obviously the big catch of the day for François Hollande. She's getting the housing ministry. And you also have 2 former Green Party members who had split with the Green parties who were entering as junior ministers. But clearly the government...
But how big is it when the Greens, what they polled in the last elections at 2% or very low numbers?
It's more the message than the actual political weight that's important. Yeah. François Hollande can say, I have a government that's not only made of socialists and member of the Radical Party, which is a small party, although they get 3 positions in the government, but it's open to the Green Party. And let's remember that one of the major achievements for François Hollande was the signing of the COP21 climate change deal. So he can send a message that, yes, he is listening to civil society and that people are much more climate conscious than they were. The question is whether this will mean anything for the French public, because we know the president is very, very low in the polls. And this is certainly not going to rattle many heads, because bringing back your first prime minister, someone who was not that popular, who's not seen as a foreign policy expert, and a few Greens is probably not going to be seen as a major earthquake or revolution in French politics.
All right, Jim Shields, it's not going to be a revolution, this reshuffle. Nonetheless, what are your thoughts? And in particular, the first point brought up by Mark, we looked it up. We can't seem to find a precedent where a prime minister under the same presidential term returns to government in a more junior position.
No, I can't either. This reminds me more of the Third Republic and the Fourth Republic, where presidents of the council would disappear, come back as ministers, disappear again, come back sometimes as president of the council again. So it isn't something of which I'm aware of a precedent under the Fifth Republic. I would also agree with Mark that this isn't a great reshuffle. The importance of it, I think, lies in bringing back the Greens, because the Greens not long ago had refused point blank to join a cabinet under Manuel Valls. Now, Hollande has some of them in there. But I also would agree with your point, Francois, that if we're talking about votes, really centre-left votes in the past 3 elections, if we top them up, and here I'm talking about socialist, various left and ecologists, in the European elections, it was just over a quarter, 26%. The departmental elections, 30%. The regional elections, most recently, 32%. So somewhere between a quarter and a third of the vote is sort of available to François Hollande within his new government. But that's still an awful long way away from where he wants to be.
So hang on, what you're telling us, Jim, is that it would have been a much bolder move on his part if the president had reached out his hand across the aisle.
Absolutely, and this takes us back to what might be described as the original sin that François Hollande committed at the very start of his presidency, which was exactly not reaching out to François Ayrault, who was ready, it seemed.
The centrist leader.
Absolutely, the centrist leader. And I think François Hollande passed up a big opportunity there and then had to look for his alliances on the left. Now, the other thing that's really important in the last 24 hours, I think, and is being eclipsed by the government reshuffle, is the announcement by Jean-Luc Mélenchon that he intends to run for the presidential election.
This is the leader of the far left. But again, his poll numbers are poor.
Sorry?
Again, his poll numbers are poor.
His poll numbers have dipped a lot, but he's a formidable campaigner. And if we go back just to 2012, he won 11% of the vote, close to 4 million votes. Now, François Hollande cannot afford a candidate to his left with that sort of electoral pulling power. So I think it's quite a significant 24 hours, not just for the reshuffle, but also for Mélenchon coming out and saying he's running again.
Pierre-Alexandre Tellier, I know that what you guys do is sort of a snapshot, and the election is not tomorrow morning. Nonetheless, listening to Jim Shields, who's saying that this is not a broad enough tent for François Hollande. This cabinet reshuffle is just going to be a storm in a teacup?
I share most of Jim's opinion, indeed. It's not a big reshuffle. It's a very shy reshuffle if you look at it from the people, from the future voters' standpoint. You just don't have anything changing but a few symbols. By symbols, I mean Jean-Marc Ayrault at the Foreign Office. Well, he speaks German. He likes Germany. It might be a symbol towards more Europe, perhaps, symbol number one. Symbol number two, we have a new minister of real equality. I absolutely don't know what it does mean, but it's probably a symbol. What else? And yes, the other symbol is the left and the radicals who are coming back, but I would say that this reshuffle is more a reshuffling for the parties than for the voters. Now, parties can align, left-wing parties can align behind François Hollande for the election, but I'm not sure at all that the change that people are asking for has been heard or shown in this reshuffle.
And the change they want is more to the center.
Now, the change they want is on two sides. Changing people. If you ask them if they do want to see Nicolas Sarkozy, François Hollande and Marine Le Pen in 2017, 90% of them tell you they do not want. So they want new people, and new people, I mean people who look able to reform and who look free. I don't know. Alain Juppé, because he's old and wise.
And he's
Emmanuel Macron, because he's young and reformist. Or we were discussing, you were talking about Christine Lagarde, because she's far away, but with a different image. This kind of politicians who look different are expected by people.
Simon Rioux, are you looking for a fresh face in 2017?
Yeah, I don't know. I think what people really want, they want new faces and new politicians, but maybe they also want us and the president to do the policy he has been elected for, and to change the people's life. And because since 2020,
so you're saying that François Hollande back in 2012 ran on a left-wing platform and now is running the country on a more centrist platform.
Yes, and that's the symbol of Emmanuel Macron staying as the economy minister. And that's also the symbol of Manuel Valls staying prime minister.
But when you heard at the outset Jim Shields say that it was a bit of an original sin on the part of François Hollande when he formed his first cabinet not to have brought in the centrists at that point, the centrists who usually align with the right, did he miss an opportunity there?
I'm not sure he missed an opportunity. I think he missed his opportunity when he decided to do a policy he hasn't been elected for. And it's a good thing that green leaders are entering the government, and it's a good thing that the government is now open to a wide political base with the green and the radicals. But you said it's a symbolic reshuffle. Maybe the symbolic is not good at any level. For example, we have a new minister for family, childhood, and women's rights, and that minister is given to a woman. So I think that's not such a good symbol. We have old white men at ministers like defense or foreign affairs, and when you say
let's run down the list here. Economy, it's a man. Finance, it's a man. Defense, foreign affairs, interior.
And we have women for childhood, family, women's rights. We have women for, school and education. And I think the symbol, what you said for having new faces and new politicians, maybe it's changing that way of governing.
So you're disappointed, in a nutshell.
I'm not disappointed.
You sound disappointed.
It's logical. His policy has been logical since 2012.
But you disagree with it seems. I mean, you're saying basically he betrayed the left that elected him back in 2000.
I'm saying he's not doing the policy he has been elected for.
Yeah, and that's what we're observing in the opinions expressed on Gov. When people are sharing their problems, they're talking about growth, they're talking about debt, they are talking about unemployment, and the only answers they get, and this is where people start to not to be able to stand anymore as a kind of answers that over the past 30 years, left or right wings brought to them. It's about these symbols. What are the answers? Let's change the constitutions. Let's think about deprivating people of nationality. Let's discuss about emergency state. Let's reshuffle our cabinet. But when do we tackle the real problems? When do we put experts, people knowing their jobs as ministers? We have plenty of talents in France, but we have the old way of politicians still running the country.
All right, the old way of the politicians. On this point, Jim Shields, you were saying that at the outset, François Hollande should have opened up more to the center. Simon Rioux disagreeing, saying that that's not the platform on which the president ran. So at this point in time, is he damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. He has kept on Manuel Valls as prime minister and his reformist economy minister, Emmanuel Macron, who has been a magnet for hate among the left wing of the party.
Yes, Simon is absolutely right to say that François Hollande is not governing on the platform for which he was elected. And that's been the case now for the past couple of years. Of course, there's nothing new about that. That's what presidents do. They campaign in poetry and then they govern in prose. They face the realities of government and so often they compromise. I would agree absolutely with Pierre Alexandre's diagnosis of what's going on here. While the country is concerned about unemployment and debt and growth and the whole gamut of socioeconomic problems that are pressing down on them, François Hollande is using up enormous amounts of political capital on this constitutional reform. I mean, I think this is the biggest own goal, the biggest unforced error, if you like, that I've seen in French politics since Jacques Chirac dissolved the National Assembly in 1997, then lost the elections and condemned himself to 5 years cohabitation with the left. It just seems to me so ill-judged in the current context.
Oh, a big own goal. I'm going to pick up on that with the rest of our panel when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.